Okay, so if you're like me, I've been just learning basic piano for about the past year, but I keep running across concepts, just fundamental music concepts that sound very confusing when you first run across them. And I've seen lots of people try to explain them, and what I've found is that they're almost all easily explainable if you just look at them a little bit differently than most musicians try to describe things. And so what I've done is I've made this graphic here that helped me to understand what the heck is going on when people talk about things like a key or a scale or different chords like a major seventh chord or a dominant chord or crazy things like, Dorian or Lydian mode. Those all can be explained in very complex musician terms, but they also can be understood and explained with very simple patterns. And so this video is going to show you how I use this graphic basically to understand each of these different patterns for these different keys and scales and chords, different chord types, chord extensions and modes and all of that. So just to give you an example, just to get started. So once you start learning piano or something, you learn about different keys. So for example, the key of C, it starts on C, and it's just all of the white notes. So you'd play it and it will sound like the Do-Re-Mi song. That one's simple enough. And so if you play a song, or if you play chords, and you just stick to the white notes, they sort of all go together because you're playing in the same key. But it gets a little bit boring after a while. And so most songs will do things like play notes outside of the key or switch keys. And once you get into different keys, so like for example the D flat major key, it starts playing a weird combination of black notes and white notes. So that one's the D flat major key. And so it can look confusing when you see, okay, this key of C is easy to understand. It's just these white notes, but what's going on when I move into D flat or any of these other keys? And what this graphic shows is that what I've done here is I've taken a standard piano keyboard, drawn at the top here, and then I've drawn it in a slightly different way than you would usually see it represented, which is that I made all of the keys the same width and spaced evenly. So you can see like this is the C on a piano up here, this is the C down here, but the C sharp or the D flat, this note between the C and the D, instead of drawing it like you would on a piano where it's up here, I just drew it next in line. And what this does is it makes it much easier to sort of see the actual relationship between the notes. So you might think that these black keys represent lesser notes, that somehow they're different than the white keys, but they're not. It's the same step mathematically between a C and a C sharp as it is between, say, an E and an F, even though one is going from a white key to a black key, and this other one from the E to the F is going from a white key to a white key. So what this does when they're evenly spaced like this is it allows me to be able to take patterns like, for example, the major key pattern that will show me what keyboard keys are the notes that are in a given key. I can drag this anywhere along this illustration, and because the notes are evenly spaced, I can see more easily that like a major, if I'm playing a major scale or playing in a major key, they're basically the same thing, that whatever note I start on, the pattern of the notes that are in that key is exactly the same no matter where you put it on the keyboard. So for example, I put this over C, so I'm playing a C major scale or playing in the key of C. And you can see that these orange circles that represent the notes that will actually be in that key or scale, those line up with exactly the white keys on the keyboard. And it works with that C or this C over here. And so I can drag it over there and see, okay, the key of C is going to be all those notes. And what I would call like the first note or the second note or the third note. The first note will be a C, second note will be a D, third will be an E, fourth will be an F. And when people say something like, oh, you just play the seventh in that scale or that key, it just means the seventh note in whatever major key you're in. So let's look at something like the key of F. And if I just played on a keyboard starting in F and just played all the white keys, it doesn't sound quite like the do, re, mi. There's one note that's off, and that is the B. We play a B flat instead in the key of F, because as you can see in my graphic, this same pattern that represents how we play a major key or a major scale shows that it's all the white notes, but with the B, we would play the B flat instead of the B. So if I play this, you'll hear it sounds more like the do, re, mi it's supposed to sound like. And then we can try this on a more complicated one, like let's do the key of A flat major. This will start on A flat. So anyway, you can see that anywhere that you want to play a major key, you just start on a key and follow this pattern. And the sequence that we would describe for this, when we're looking at this, a step from one note to the one right next to it, we would call a half step. So from like A flat to A, that's a half step. But if we go two notes, two keys, two piano keys up, like from an A flat to a B flat or from an A to a B, that's called a whole step or a whole tone. So the pattern for a major key or a major scale is whole tone, half tone, whole tone, whole tone, half tone. And anywhere you play it, another way to think about it is play a note, skip one key, skip one note on the keyboard, skip another, then play the next, then skip, then skip, then skip, then play the next. And you can just count from wherever you start on the keyboard and you'll play a major scale or be playing in a major key if you do that. So that's for the major key or scale. Minor is very similar, but it's just a slightly different pattern. So you can see if I can compare these two next to each other, the way that a minor key differs from a major key is that the third note is half a step down, the sixth note is also half a step down, and the seventh note is half a step down. And so I can just line this up anywhere along here, and so the key of C minor would be, whoops, F, G, there we go. I'm not good at playing these, but you can see that sounds, it sounds minor. It sounds a little bit spooky. And if I pull this over so that I'm playing in the key of A minor, we see an interesting thing, which is that this is actually, again, all the white notes, which we have the key of C major, which was all the white notes. So how can the key of A minor also be all the white notes? And you'll hear musicians say that each major key has a corresponding minor key. This is what they mean, is that, let me show you. So I'll play the scale, the C major scale. So I'm starting in C. It sounds like do, re, mi. If I play the white notes also, but I start with the A, then it will have that minor sound. So anyway, a little bit crazy, but that's the difference between a major key or scale and a minor key or scale. So let's show like a blues scale. So this one's interesting. This one's easiest for me to play in a blues scale starting on G flat, because you'll notice as I drag this pattern, and I could play it in any key. I could play the blues scale starting on E or C sharp or whatever, but I put it here just because it's easiest to play, because you can see this will line up with all the black keys on the keyboard plus the A. And so you can hear, if I just stick to those notes in that scale, I'm all of a sudden playing the blues. And if I had the skill and had this all memorized, I could switch to different keys or play in a different key, but I don't have that ability yet. But this is just to show you that pattern, that it's really just a different pattern than the major scale. So now let's see how this works with chords, because chords, so a major key is just a pattern of notes that you're sort of allowed to play that will sound in that key. A chord is notes that you play all at once, but it's also just a pattern. And so you'll notice if I drag this major chord over by this major key pattern, the notes in the major chord are notes from the major key, the first, the third, and the fifth. And so that's why when you play a major chord, people are like, oh, you just play the first, the third, and the fifth in that key, which makes sense if you know what they're talking about, but if you're just coming at this, you're like, wait, what? So for example, a C major chord, I drag that over the C to start on, and it's just the C, the E, and the G. That one's easy. Let's try something a little bit funkier, like E flat major. So this uses some black keys. But you can see it's the same pattern as if I'm doing it starting on C or wherever. And the way to play any major chord is basically start on a note, then skip 3 half steps and play the 4th one, then skip 2 half steps and play the 3rd one after that. So it's a note, skip 3, skip 2. And that will play you a major chord anywhere you start. So if I start here, skip 3, skip 2. And that is your G flat major. And now if you want to make it sound a little jazzy, you can use the major 7th chord, which I have the pattern for here. And you can see that it's the same notes. The first 3 notes are the same as in a major chord, but then it's got one more note, which we call the 7th note, because again, if I compare it to this major key, major scale over here, it plays the 1st note in that, the 3rd note, the 5th note, and the 7th note in that scale. So let's do a C major without the 7th, and then with the 7th it's going to sound a little jazzy. So this is without, this is with. So 7th notes are what makes things sound jazzy, and then you can add 9ths and 11ths, and we won't go into all of that. But again, I can just drag this same pattern anywhere, and the pattern from major 7th chord is, okay, so let's do this E flat major 7th. It's play a note, skip 3, skip 2, then skip another 3. So 3, 2, 3 that I'm skipping from the note that I start on. And it makes these lovely 7th chords. And then let's just show a minor chord. You can see that the difference between a minor chord and a major chord is that that middle note is half a step down. So we would call that a minor 3rd instead of a major 3rd. And that's, if we take it over by the minor scale, or the minor key, you'll see it's the 3rd, it's the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th note in that key. So we can put this anywhere. So a C minor, so the C major is just these 3 white notes, but that middle one goes half a step down, and it sounds minor. And the pattern is start on a note, skip 2, then play the next note, then skip 3, play the next note. And I can do that anywhere, and it will make a minor chord. Skip 2, skip 3. So it's just a pattern, and you get to learn these patterns, and you're not counting the notes every time. As you get to know them better, you get used to it, and so you can play a C minor seventh or a flat minor seventh or a B flat major seventh, and you just have the patterns sort of instinctively memorized in your hands and in your brain. So you're not doing this. But just to understand, again, the basic concept is it's just these patterns. So I've got a few other chords here, and you can download this this graphic. I've put the link in the text in the description, and you can download this and just, you can either download it as an SVG or and then you could open it in an image editor and drag stuff around just like this so that you can sort of see how these things work when you're first learning. Or you can download it as a PDF and actually print it out and then just cut out each of these things, and then you can literally just move your cutout pieces of paper over this keyboard and learn all of your chords and your scales that way. Let me just quickly comment on modes, because that's another thing that's just a pattern. A mode is, it's like a major key or a scale, but the different modes of that key are basically playing the notes in that key starting on a different note. So for example, C major is played like this again. But the Dorian mode of that, for example, so if I drag this Dorian mode up here, the Dorian mode of C starts on D. It's the second note up. And so if I play those same notes from this C major scale but start on the second note, it sounds different. And there's a name for each of the modes. There's Ionian, Dorian, and then I don't know the name of all the other ones. I think the fifth one is the Lydian mode, which I have included here. I'm not very good at this, but the reason that they have these modes is that, like in jazz piano, if you're playing some sort of like a minor chord, like this one's a D minor seventh, you would play a Dorian, you might improvise using Dorian scale, or Dorian mode rather. And then when you play a major scale, you would use like the Lydian mode or whatever. But anyway, again, this video is not to explain how all these things work, just to show that you can understand these things as just patterns. And when musicians get good, they have all these things instinctively in their brains and at their fingertips, so that they can instantly switch from one mode to a next in any key, and they can instantly play, you know, the second chord in a key and the fifth chord in a key and the one chord in a key, and then switch to a different key and improvise over all of those using different modes, and then, you know, maybe throw in a blues scale there or something. But it's really just coming down to these patterns. And so hopefully this helped you understand what the heck is going on with music theory when people talk about all of these things. Potentially I'll make another sheet that's downloadable and link to it in the description that has all of the modes and many more of the chords. But as of this publishing, I'll just do it like this. But once you get a handle on this, then you can start to just, it makes a lot more sense when you hear other people talking about it, and then you can learn how to construct all kinds of different chords and how to improvise and how to sort of construct a song in different keys that makes sense and sounds good. Now, in the spirit of shameless self-promotion, I'm also just going to quickly show you my app Notorio, which is an app that it's available for free on the App Store, and it helps you to learn to play sheet music, basically. So one of the main, let's put this in treble clef and random notes and all keys. One of the main things that you would want to learn next in learning music is how to read notes so that you can play from sheet music. And what Notorio does is it will show us notes and then it listens for me to play the correct note. And you need to learn a little bit before you start on this about what these lines represent. This middle one is middle C, which is this note. And it's hearing my voice sometimes when I'm talking, so that's why you'll see some notes advance when I don't play them. But so that, for example, that's a G sharp. And so if I play these other notes around it, it won't advance. But once I play the right note, it hears it and it will show me the next one. And so I'm not actually very good yet at sight reading, but basically it helps you to be able to correlate, okay, what are the notes on there, and where do I play them on the keyboard? And you can get better and better at it. I do much better. It gives you a score afterwards, and this is not a good score. But I can go to my progress, and you can see my score over time, and it's usually up more in sort of the 500 to 700 range. But I've actually gotten worse recently because I've been doing programming and making videos rather than practicing piano. But go download this in the App Store. It's free, and you can also, it's got different modes where you can use a timer, and you can do things like have it just flash different jazz chords, for example. And so like in this one, it's not listening to me, it's just going to show those kind of like flashcards so that I can start just getting quicker and quicker at playing things. And these I basically know. Whoops, except I played the wrong chord. Anyway, I think it's a neat little app, and I hope that you love it. So go download that and give it a try. So I hope you found that helpful, and let me know what you think in the comments if there's anything else you'd like me to add to the image for downloads. Thanks!